Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down the key updates you need to know. We're looking at the big stories from January 17th, 2026. Okay, so let's dive into what's on the agenda. We're going to start with money, risk, and insurance. Then we'll look at some key leadership changes in both business and security. After that, we'll check out which states are leading the pack on exports and tech. And we'll wrap up with some fascinating stories on innovation and the right to information. All right, first up, let's talk about money. We've got two really interesting stories here about managing financial risk, and they cover everything from your personal health all the way up to the entire national banking system.
So this first story really kicks off with a big question. How can the government offer better financial security for its own employees and pensioners when it comes to healthcare costs?
Well, it looks like the Union Finance Ministry has an answer. They've just launched a brand new health insurance policy. It's called the Paripurna Mediclaim Ayush Insurance. And the whole idea is to give people an extra cushion against those ever-rising medical bills.
Now, here's the key thing to understand. This new policy isn't meant to replace the existing healthcare plan for government employees, which you might know as the CGHS or the Central Government Health Scheme. Instead, think of it more as a top-up, an extra layer of protection. So, the big takeaway here is that it's optional. It's an add-on for anyone who's already a CGHS beneficiary. It just launched on January 14th, and its sole purpose is to complement the existing plan and give people a little more peace of mind.
Okay, so we've talked personal finance. Now let's zoom out to the national level. The Reserve Bank of India is grappling with a huge challenge, and that's forex risk. You know, that financial tightrope you walk when currency values are bouncing all over the place. So what's the RBI's game plan? Well, with global markets being so unpredictable and Indian banks doing more business overseas, they've proposed a whole new framework to get smarter about managing risk. They're looking to tighten up the rules and really align India's banking regulations with international standards, specifically the Basel standards, to keep things nice and stable.
All right, so we've gone from managing risk to managing organizations. Our next section is all about some major new appointments at the very top, both in the corporate world and in national security.
First up, in business, TVS Supply Chain Solutions has a new global CEO, Vikash Chadha. And what's interesting here is this isn't some sudden shakeup. Nope, it's part of a really well-thought-out succession plan as the current MD gets ready to retire. Moves like this are just crucial for keeping things steady and making sure investors stay confident.
And at the same time, over national security, we're seeing two massive appointments to lead India's border forces. You've got Shatrajit Singh Kapoor taking the helm at the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, and Praveen Kumar is now in charge of the Border Security Force. These are absolutely critical roles, responsible for safeguarding the nation's frontiers.
Okay, moving on. Now we're going to get into a bit of friendly competition. We're looking at which states are really pulling ahead in the economic race, and also which bank is making a name for itself as a leader in technology. So, there's this new report out from Niti Aayog, and it's super interesting. It basically ranks how ready each state is to compete in the global export market. And what it's showing us is that a country's overall competitiveness really boils down to how well individual states are performing. You know, their policies, their infrastructure, all that stuff. So, the big question is, who's number one? Which Indian state is leading the pack in the 2024 Export Preparedness Index?
And the top spot goes to Maharashtra. They've actually managed to overtake Tamil Nadu, which was last year's leader. The report says their success really comes down to having a strong policy framework and some really well-developed infrastructure.
All right, let's switch gears to the banking world. In an era where every single bank is scrambling to go digital, Karnataka Bank is getting a major shout out for its innovation. This is a huge deal because that digital transformation is a massive challenge for the whole industry. Yeah, they picked up a pretty prestigious award from the Indian Banks Association, and it was specifically for how well they've adopted new fintech solutions and plugged into things like digital payment systems. It's basically a big stamp of approval, saying they're successfully navigating this new digital world. And that brings us to our final section for today, which covers a couple of really different but equally important topics: a breakthrough in agricultural science and a landmark decision on the right to information. So first up, say hello to the Karan Fries cow. Now, this isn't just any cow. It's basically a scientific answer to some of the huge challenges facing India's dairy sector, like climate change and the constant demand for higher production. So what makes this cow so special?
Well, it was developed by the National Dairy Research Institute, and it's a crossbreed between a Holstein Friesian and a Tharparker. The result? You get an animal that's not only a high-yield milk producer, but is also tough enough to handle a changing climate. It's a fantastic example of how targeted research can lead to real, sustainable solutions. And finally today, we're looking at a court ruling that really gets to the heart of a classic debate, the public's right to know versus an organization's right to privacy. It's all about finding that delicate balance. This all centers around a major judgment from the Delhi High Court. The court ruled that the PM Cares Fund is actually entitled to privacy protections under the Right to Information Act, or the RTI Act. So what the court is saying here is that even if you consider an entity to be a state body, it doesn't just lose its right to privacy. The RTI Act itself, the very law designed for transparency, has built-in exceptions to protect sensitive information. The court's decision was really just reaffirming that balance that's already in the law.
And that wraps up our briefing. We've seen shifts in finance, leadership, and law, and it really leaves us with a final thoughts. With all these developments, from risk management to privacy rights, what do these changes really signal about the road ahead?